All right, I will say good morning. Good Chodesh. Baruch Hashem. To continue Masechet Sanhedrin, begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's shir. To thank our Talmud Torah sponsors, our annual Talmud Torah sponsor for Tafshin Pei, the Tilson Mishpacha of Eretz Yisrael, for dedicating all of the shiurim and drashos this month as a zechus for besuros tovos for all of Am Yisroel. Our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Kislev, Habalina Latova, Josh and Becca Friedman, for dedicating the shiurim this month in the commemoration of the Yahrzeit of Josh's father, Yisroel Yehuda, HaRav Chaim Rephael, zechus Livracha, Semi and Malka Esterson, in memory of their parents, Yitzchak Laib and Aharon HaKohen, Sarah Rachel bas Baruch Avraham, Hinda bas Henech Efrayim, and beloved husband, father, brave soldier, dear friend, Naftali Gordon, Naftali Yonah Hy, Ben Beatrice, Miriam, and Daniel Yigal. Our week of learning sponsors, Bruce Levin, in the merit and memory of Avital Kala Bas Tova Batya, and Paul and Kathy Pollack in memory of Paul's aunt, Esther Bas Zechariah, Zichron Livrach. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the Neshama Slav and Aliyah, the families in Nechama, all those who need a refuah should have one together with Kol Chole Yisrael. Kadosh Baruch Hu should in merit Hashem bring our hostages home b'shalom and b'karov, and our holy soldiers should be successful b'chol ma'aseh yedehem. With that, let us begin. A lot to do today. Baruch Hashem, really incredible daf ahead of us. Today's daf is Yud Daled 14, and we are picking up on Yud Daled. Actually, we made some good headway yesterday, and we are picking up Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15 lines down from the top. So if you remember again, the Gemara introduced us to the concept of smicha. So remember again, we were dealing yesterday with two different types of smicha. Actual smicha, in other words, putting your hands on the carbon, referring to a par ha'elam davar min hatzibor, a special carbon that's offered when the Sanhedrin offers an erroneous ruling, and Klal Yisrael acts upon that ruling. There's a special offering, a sin offering that is brought by the members of the Sanhedrin, and that carbon requires smicha. Then the Gemara transitioned over to a different topic, which is smicha, what we'll call ordination. Ordination of rabbanim, of rabbis, of rabbinical judges, of Jewish leaders. So smicha, and the Gemara wanted to suggest, the Gemara was saying that the Brisa said that smicha has to be done with a basin of 3. The Gemara then brought down this incredible dramatic story of Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, which is how we ended off yesterday's shir. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava literally again conferring smicha and then holding off an entire Roman legion so that the new musmachim, the newly ordained rabbis, would have the ability to escape and ultimately again assume the mantle of responsibility. But yet Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava was one person. So it appears based on this Gemara that smicha can be conferred by one person. It doesn't require a basin of 3. To which the Gemara says, no. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava achrini havu ba'adei. No, there are other people. There are 2 other people with Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. He wasn't the only person conveying smicha. So why aren't they mentioned? They're not mentioned out of deference to Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. In other words, we see this sometimes in Gemara. It's actually interesting that sometimes when you have different sages, and one of them is so dramatically greater than the other ones, sometimes the others are not mentioned out of kavod to the greater judge or to the greater Rav. So Yehuda ben Bava, so there was a beis din was conferring smicha, but Yehuda ben Bava was so much greater than the other rabbanim that the other ones simply were not mentioned. Incredible. So Gemara says, by the way, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava samchei, is that true that Rabbi Meir was ordained by Rabbi Yehuda? Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. So the Gemara says, "V'ha Amar Rabbi Baruch Avraham, Amar Rabbi Yochanan." Because remember, Rabbi Meir was one of the rabbanim, one of the 5 that was mentioned who was given smicha by Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. But that's not true. After all, the Gemara says, "V'ha Amar Rabbi Baruch Avraham, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Kol Omer Rabbi Meir lo samchu Rabbi Akiva eno ela toah." Essentially, the Gemara says, whoever says that Rabbi Meir wasn't ordained by Rabbi Akiva is mistaken. Now, as well say that Rabbi Meir received his smicha from Rabbi Akiva. They both say, now, by the way, just so you know, where else do we know this from, that Rabbi Meir got smicha from Rabbi Akiva? They both say, if you remember again the dramatic Gemaras by Acher, Elisha ben Avuya. Elisha ben Avuya was the great rabbinic sage who left the fold. All of his rabbinic colleagues shunned him, except for Rabbi Meir. And how did Rabbi Meir constantly refer? How did he engage Elisha ben Avuya? He would ask Elisha ben Avuya a question, and he would give an answer. And then Elisha ben Avuya would say, Meir, Rabbi Akiva Rabcha lo amar kein. then Elisha ben Avuya would give another answer from Rabbi Akiva, and he would refer to Rabbi Akiva as the Rebbe of Rabbi Meir. So the Gemara says, how can you say that Rabbi Meir got smicha from Yehuda ben Baba? He got it from Rabbi Akiva. To which the Gemara says, it's incredible. The Gemara says, good. Samchei Rabbi Akiva v'lo kiblu. Samchei Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba v'kiblu. So this is fascinating, I will say. So apparently, Rabbi Meir received smicha from Rabbi Akiva, but he was not accepted. He received smicha from Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba, and he was accepted. Now, listen, what does that mean? Can you imagine, by the way, not accepting the smicha of Rabbi Akiva? Yeah, we don't need that hashgacha. What does that mean? So Rashi points out over here, it wasn't the din in the smicha. If you look at Rashi, 4 lines up from the top, v'lo kiblu lefi sha'adayin haya bocher. This is interesting. So Rabbi Meir was a prodigy. When he was young, he got smicha from Rabbi Akiva. But because he was young, people didn't accept the smicha. Sometimes people have difficulty accepting authority from a youthful source. So when he was young, he received smicha from Rabbi Akiva. They didn't accept it. When he was older, he got smicha from Yehuda ben Bava. They accepted it. Incredible. Rabbi Shmuel ben Levi, ain't smicha b'chutz la'aretz. Well, so now that the Gemara started that, this is actually a fascinating sugya. Now that the Gemara began a discussion about smicha, again, ordination smicha, so the Gemara continues this. Listen to this. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Shmuel ben Levi, Rabbi Shmuel ben Levi says as follows, ain't smicha b'chutz la'aretz. There's no smicha in chutz la'aretz, outside Eretz Yisrael. So the Gemara says, what does that mean? My in smicha, what does that mean? Ilema delo daini dine knosas klal b'chutz la'aretz. I remember again, as we saw in yesterday's daf, one of the important elements of smicha is that having smicha allows you to adjudicate knas cases, penalty cases. Remember again, in the world of in the world of financial law, there's 2 different types of financial cases. There's knas and there's mammon, right? So knas is going to be a penalty payment. Mammon is a monetary payment. Monetary payments are much more logical. Knas payments require a much more heightened level of expertise in halacha. So you need smicha in order to be done knas. So what does that mean? If you say there's no smicha in chutz la'aretz, does that mean outside of Eretz Yisrael you can't adjudicate knas cases? Similar to Vahatnan, Sanhedrin nohages bein baris bein chutz la'aretz. So we learned that the Sanhedrin has the ability to rule on cases in Eretz Yisrael and outside of Eretz Yisrael. Ella delos samchinon b'chutz la'aretz. Rather, Rabbi say what it means is we do not confer smicha in chutz la'aretz. We don't confer smicha in chutz la'aretz. So Rabbi say, so now the Gemara says, so what does that mean? Right? What does that mean that we don't confer smicha in chutz la'aretz? So pshita psomchin b'chutz la'aretz v'nismachin ba'aretz hamrin dalo. So Rabbi say, so it's clear that if, in other words, what does it mean you can't grant smicha in chutz la'aretz? Obviously, you can't have a beis din in chutz la'aretz that is conveying smicha, right? Even if they're conveying smicha to people in Eretz Yisrael, smicha sounds like the Gemara is saying is smicha can only be granted from within a beis din in Eretz Yisrael, right? Can't be done from chutz la'aretz to Eretz Yisrael. So look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi says pshita somkin. It's a second short line in Rashi. Pshita somkin chutz la'aretz in bnei Bavel. Nostin reshus le'echa sheberetz Yisrael ladum knossos. So let's say again, if you have a rabbinic body in Bavel and they want to confer smicha upon someone in Eretz Yisrael to go ahead and adjudicate knas cases, so Rashi says, the Gemara says ha'aminon delo. So that's clear. You can't do that. Rashi says why? De'in smicha b'chutz la'aretz. The chayvan delo hava gaban hacha lo matzinu lemismichei kol shechein heicha deleise gaban. So we'll say. So it's clear. The Gemara says that the body that confers smicha upon others must be a body based in Eretz Yisrael. That's what we know. However, the Gemara says, Ella somchin ba'aretz lenismachin b'chutz la'aretz mai. So here's the question: can a rabbinic body in Eretz Yisrael convey smicha to people in chutz la'aretz, outside of Eretz Yisrael? That's the shayla. So listen to this. So Tashma, the Rabbi Yochanan have a mitzvah elei Rav Shmuel bar Abba the lahava gabay the lismechei. So listen to this. Rabbi Yochanan was very bothered, distressed that Rav Shmuel bar Abba was not in proximity to him so that he could give him smicha. Right? Rabbi Yochanan wanted to give Rav Shmuel bar Abba smicha, and he was distressed that Rav Shmuel bar Abba was never there together with him. Okay. Rabbi Shimon ben Zerud, Bechad Di'imei. Similarly, again, he also wanted to convey smicha to Rabbi Shimon ben Zerud and someone else. Who was the other person? Umanu Rabbi Yochanan ben Achnoi, Va'amri lei, Rabbi Yochanan ben Achmai Bechad Di'imei. Others say that Rabbi Yochanan wanted to convey smicha to Rabbi Yonasan ben Achmai, Bechad Di'imei, someone else with him. Umanu Rabbi Shimon ben Zerud, Bechad Dahava Gabayu. So the Gemara says, Bechad Dahava Gabayu, Samchu. So Rabbi Yochanan was able to convey smicha to the person who was with him. But the one who was not with him, he wasn't able to give smicha to. What do you see from here? That not only does the rabbinic body or individual conveying smicha have to be in Eretz Yisrael, but the person who is receiving smicha has to be in Eretz Yisrael as well. So smicha, so I will say, so two elements over here taught us about smicha. Number one, and now by the way, just from here, it sounds like smicha can be conveyed by an individual and doesn't necessarily require an entire base. Then again, we'll have to see this because it sounds like Rabbi Yochanan himself is the one who's giving smicha. But two important halachas. Number one, the grantor of smicha or the conveyor of smicha has to be based in Eretz Yisrael, and the one receiving it has to be in proximity to the one granting it, and therefore he has to be in Eretz Yisrael as well. Incredible. So the Gemara goes will say, Rabbi Chanina, Rabbi Oshia. So we'll say, first wide line, Hava kamishtakit Rabbi Yochanan lemismechinu, v'lo mistayim milsa. So we'll say an incredible Gemara. Rabbi Chanina, Rabbi Oshia. So again, once again, Rabbi Yochanan wanted to convey smicha to Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Oshia. Wanted to convey smicha, but the Gemara said, lo hava mistayim milsa. So I'll say, this lashon is always interesting. Lo hava mistayim milsa means it just never worked out. It never worked out. If you look at Rashi, lo hava mistayim milsa, kishaya etzlo, lo haya motza shnayim sheyitztarfu imo l'samcho, va'anan tlasa ba'inan. So first of all, what often ended up happening over here, whenever these two Rabbanim, Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Oshia, were by Rabbi Yochanan, you need a beis din to convey smicha. So this once again, it comes back to what we thought originally. One person can't do it on his own. You need a beis din. So whenever these two Rabbanim with Rabbi Yochanan was never able to assemble two other people to make a beis din. There are circumstances in life like this that for whatever the reason, things just don't come together. Again, it's not for a lack of trying, right? Rabbi Yochanan is trying to give them smicha. These individuals, again, seem to be present, but yet, whatever, either when he gets the beis din, the guys aren't around, these other Rabbanim. When the Rabbanim are around, can't get the beis din together. Well, it's important. I don't know I think we all have like moments or periods of life like this. Lo hava mistayim milsa. Things are just not coming together as they need to come together. And it's important to understand that this is sometimes part of the fabric of life. Sometimes things don't come together because I'm not trying hard enough or I'm not organized enough. But sometimes things don't come together just because HaKadosh Baruch Hu just is not allowing the pieces to drop in the right way. So he's unable to give them smicha. Hava kamet star tuva. Rabbi Yochanan was very upset. He was very bothered. Right? He was troubled by this because at the end of the day, he wanted to be able to convey smicha. Also, remember again, smicha is incredibly important because with smicha comes the continuity of the Masorah of our rabbinic tradition, ability to go ahead and adjudicate knas cases. There's a lot wrapped in there. So the Gemara says, Amarlei lo nitztariman. So this is incredible. Rabbi Chanina, Rabbi Oshia said to Rabbi Yochanan, don't be upset. Don't be upset. We're not surprised that things aren't coming together. Why? Da'anan midbeis Eli Kasinon. We are descendants from Eli HaKohen. Eli HaKohen. So remember again, Eli HaKohen was the Kohen Gadol in the Mishkan at the times of Shmuel Hanavi. Well, even before the times of Shmuel Hanavi, Eli was an incredibly pious individual. But his sons engaged in some pretty negative behavior, and Eli never took them to task for it. See, I will say a tremendous yisod in parenting, that as much as a parent can't control what their children do, it's true. But when my children are young and they're in my home and they're under my influence, I do have the ability to exert influence over them. And failure to properly educate and lead and inspire one's children when they're young is a source of parental responsibility. And even when they get older, if I see my kids do, this is often a struggle that parents with adult children have. I see my kid doing something negative, but they're older already. So parents often think, I should mind my own business. Don't mind your own business. don't mind your business. Feel free to butt in. If you see your kid doing something wrong, it doesn't matter if they're 13 or they're 33. Say something. Say something. And if your child knows that they love you enough, that you love them enough, they may be annoyed at you, but at the end of the day, they'll appreciate it. That's the job of a parent. If you see your child doing something wrong, it doesn't matter what age they are, the ability, and I'm saying this coming off like a long family weekend, right? So I did put this into practice a number of times, right? You see your kids doing something that's just not right. It doesn't make a difference whether they're young or they're adults or they're. It is a parental responsibility, especially, I don't mean like for little things, because then that's just annoying and being a nudnik. But sometimes if you see something that borders on a bit egregious, it's a parent's responsibility to step in and to be able to. So Eli's sons were doing some really bad stuff, and they were doing it inside of the Mishkan. Eli had a responsibility to step in, and he didn't. And therefore, again, he's held culpable. What's the result of that? The result of that is essentially Eli's offspring were cursed, and that they were not going to lead long lives. So listen to this. It's a wild story. So don't be upset. We're not surprised at all that the whole smicha thing is not working out. Why not? So the Gemara says, "Da'anan mit beis Eli kasinon." We are descendants of Eli. Rabbi Shmuel Silber, Rabbi Yonah Hy, minayin shenismachan lebeis Eli. How do we know that smicha is never conferred to the descendants of Eli? Shneimar lo yeh zakin beveisecha kol hayamim. Because the pasuk says one of the curse of beis Eli is literally there'll be no elders that issue forth from Eli's home, from Eli's family. So my zaken. So I'll say, what does it mean zaken? Elim is zaken mamish. If you say that literally old, no one will grow old from Eli's descendants. Pasuk already says that. Pasuk already says that the male descendants of Eli will die young. Ella smicha. Rather, you have to say zikenecha, right? Zaken in this context doesn't mean biologically old. Rather, it means elders. And therefore the pasuk is saying that none of Eli's descendants will ever receive smicha. So amazingly enough, Rabbi Hanina and Rabbi Shia understood why this was not coming together to get smicha from Rabbi Yochanan. I'll point out over here something amazing. If you take a look at Rashi says Ela smicha. So listen to this. Shafilu chacham abayim lechal zikna. Kegon ayidei Torah gemilas chasad l'kamina b'Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi said the Gemara Masechus Rosh Hashanah, we've seen this before, discusses this whole thing with Eli and Eli's descendants. And the Gemara says the Gemara pointed out that there were certain descendants of Eli that did grow old. But how did they grow old if there was this curse hanging over them? So the Gemara attributed their ability to grow old through Torah and Chesed. So even the descendants of Eli, if they engaged in learning and did acts of chesed, were able to avert the effects of the curse. I will say, how overwhelming is that? Even if the Ribono Shel Olam curses your mishpacha and says that because of the egregious acts of your family, not your family, person's family, that all of the male members of the family are going to die young. If the male members of the family decide to immerse themselves in Torah, decide to immerse themselves in Chesed, they could stave off the effects of a divine curse. That is the power of Torah and Chesed. We don't even realize the powerful tools that we have at our disposal day in and day out, and how they could transform our lives and the lives of those around us. Even if a person is cursed, Chas v'Shalom, Torah and Chesed has the ability to change their fate. But again, with Beis Eli, as much as Torah and Chesed could stave off the effects of the curse and allow them to grow old, what it won't allow is for the descendants of Eli to receive smicha. Incredible. Rabbi Zera, incredible Gemaras. Rabbi Zera, have a mitmar l'mismechei. Rabbi Zera, when someone, whoever, the Gemara doesn't tell us who it was, Rabbi Zera, somebody wanted to confer smicha upon him, he hid. Rabbi Zera hid. He didn't want to get smicha. Why not? The Rabbi Elazar, the olam have a kabel v'kayom. So ultimately, again, because Rabbi Elazar said that a person should always try to hide himself in the darkness and will live a long life. What does that mean? If you look at Rashi's great Rashi, have a kabel afel. Put yourself in the darkness, v'kayom, and you'll live. V'tichya kilomar herchek min harabanos. Whatever you do, stay away from the rabbanos. Shemikareves is ba'aleha. Shemikaber is ba'al, because it buries those who engage in this profession. I feel the Matari Sigmar says, so it's incredible. So Rabbi Zera, they wanted to give him smicha. He was like, no way. no way. I'm not getting into Jewish communal leadership, because what does Jewish communal leadership do to a people, do to a person? It buries them. It buries them. I will say, by the way, it doesn't just here, we have this concept, right? We've seen this many times before, right? That those who take this, right? The Gemara calls, for example, Navi calls Shmuel very old, Shmuel HaNavi. Shmuel HaNavi was only 52 years old when he died. So the Gemara says, so why did he look so old? Why did he look so old? Why did he look so old? He was the Navi. He was the leader. He was the leader. So, and you see many examples. Leadership prematurely ages people. The responsibility, also this metaphor of that leadership buries the individual. So it could mean premature death. It could also mean that sometimes the leader feels buried and overwhelmed by the multiple layers of responsibility that are upon him, and doesn't really feel a way necessarily to be able to dig out, right? To be able to see the light of day a little bit. So here you have over here, Rabbi Zera said, you know what? No, thank you. No, thank you. So any time anyone tried to confer smicha upon him, he hid. Kevan the Shamil Hadam Rabbi Lazar. But yet then when he heard this other statement of Rabbi Lazar, what Rabbi Lazar say? Ein Adam Ola L'Gdula Ela Imkein Mochlin Lo Akol Avonosav. But yet then he heard what is incredible, that a person doesn't rise to prominence unless, of course, all of his sins are forgiven, which is another way of saying essentially that those who take on the responsibility of leadership are given a gift by HaKadosh Baruch Hu of forgiveness for their sins. Amsilei nafshe. Suddenly again, he made himself available for smicha. Okay, not bad. So awesome responsibility. Sometimes feel like you're being buried in the responsibility, but Baruch Hashem, siyata d'shmaya, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu forgives your sins. See, he allowed himself to get smicha. Kisamchol, was beautiful. Kisamchol Rabbi Zera, when they gave smicha to Rabbi Zera, sharei hachi. They sang the following song. This is beautiful. Lo kachol v'lo srak. Lo pirchas v'yalaskin, which essentially means, now Rashi points out, this was normally a song that they would sing at a wedding for a kala. And the song essentially says, I don't know the tune for it, right? But the song essentially says, this kala is so beautiful, she does not need any makeup. She doesn't need her makeup, she doesn't need her hair done, she doesn't need any external accoutrements, because she is naturally beautiful. So when Rabbi Zera, so beautiful, Rabbi Zera got smicha, they sang this about him. What they were saying was, Rabbi Zera, the honors don't make the man. Or I should say, the title doesn't make the man. The man makes the title. Rabbi Zera himself is so beautiful and so virtuous and so holy and so pious. It's not the conference of smicha that makes him special, but it's the man who makes the title of rabbi, of rav, of rebbe in this context, makes that title special. So beautiful. Kisamchul Rabbi Amir Rasi, when they gave smichas to Rabbi Asi, Sharli Hachi, they sang the following song. Kol min dain samuchulanu. A man like this, or someone like this, give smicha to. In other words, you have to understand something. The giving of smicha was a very special event, because like we were talking about before, it represents an ongoing additional link in the chain of the Masorah. So they sang, kol min din, a man like this, smuchulanu, give smicha to them, smuchulanu. Lo tismuchulanu, this is incredible, lo tismuchulanu, lo misarmitin, velo misarmisin. Whatever you do, don't give smicha to a misarmitin or a misarmitin. What is that? Look at Rashi. Rashi says, sarmisin. Rashi says, loshon hafachnim. So we'll say, sarmisin, Rashi says over here, means people who waver. Now, Rashi says, shemahapchin es tamei Torah, people who pervert the logic of Torah, but it also can mean people who aren't decisive. They flip-flop. Don't give smicha to someone who's not decisive. Why? Because one of the keys for effective leadership, which is what smicha essentially means, is the ability to be decisive, the ability to make a decision, the ability to move forward in a particular direction. What is sarmisin? That's sarmisin. What is sarmitin? Rashi says, Lashon smirtut kilomer shein noslim tam hagun l'divrei. So sarmitin is like a rag. So don't give smicha to someone like a rag. When is someone like a rag? So again, someone who's in Rashi says over here, doesn't give proper reasoning for his halachic decisions. Okay. Lo machmisin velo meturmisin. Others say, don't give it to the machmisin. Rashi says, what's chamisin? Chamsanim shemonin milomer tamei Torah. So what's the chamsan? It literally means like a thief. Someone who goes ahead and withholds his Torah and doesn't share it with others. Don't give smicha to someone like this. And the last one is very interesting. Velo mitramisin. We'll say a turmis. The Maharsha points out is a lupine, which is like a bitter. I think it's a legume or vegetable, right? So the Maharsha says something amazing. Maharsha says, what does that mean? He says the leader has to have a positive disposition, right? If the leader doesn't smile, if the leader is not happy, if the leader is always negative, sometimes you see people like this who carry an awesome load, and as a result of that, they're like cranky, or they're just upset, or they're just not happy. So don't give us leaders like that. Don't give us cranky leaders. The leader has to exude a happiness, a simchas achayim. So there's a lot to say on this Gemara over here, right? Again, and all of this is when they were giving smicha to Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi. The people were saying, don't give us leaders. Don't give us leaders who aren't decisive. Don't give us leaders who don't share the beauty of their wisdom. Don't give us leaders who hold back and don't share themselves fully with their constituency, and don't give us leaders who are bitter. Give us leaders who are only besimcha. Incredible. Rabbi Avo kihavu asim misifta lebe Kesar. This is beautiful. When Rabbi Avo would leave the yeshiva, go from the yeshiva to the house, to the palace of the Caesar, nafok matronisa debe Kesar umesharyane. Listen to this. The maidens, the young women of the Caesar's household would come out and would sing to him. This is wild. They would sing to him. What would they say? Rabba da'ameh, midabarna du'umase, the rabbi of his people, leader of his people, the spokesman of his nation, Bautzina dinahura, the beautiful light. Beautiful light. Rashi says, Al Shem Shaya Gadol Benoy. He was also very handsome. Apparently, Rabbi Ava was very handsome. Baruch Masyach L'Shalom. May you come here in peace. So I said, what's the pshat with this? What is the pshat of this? That here the Gemara says Rabbi Avo would come to the palace of the Caesar, that the non-Jewish girls, right, the maidens of the palace would come out and sing to him. What's the pshat? So I think what the Gemara is teaching us is something very important. When a person stands up for their beliefs, and a person does not compromise their beliefs in order to fit in, the world will respect you. See, this happens to us so often as from Jews in greater society, right? You see this all the time, right? When young people go for job interviews or they're starting out in their careers and they're trying to figure out, again, now it's very different because it's a different world. Yarmulke, no yarmulke. Tell them about early Shabbos, early Friday. Early Friday, for half of the year is like, a big thing. Yom Tiv, there's a cholamayid, there's a first days, there's a last days, there's all these kind of things. And people often, let's say, the klal gadol in life is be proud of what you are, be proud of who you are. The world respects people who stand for their beliefs, even if they don't agree with them. What the world doesn't respect is people who don't really respect their beliefs enough to be able to be outspoken, proud, and direct about it. In other words, that's the Gemara saying over here. You don't have to cave to the world. The world caves to us. That's the way it works. That the world respects, or the world ultimately, again, even if they don't like, but they will respect proud Jews. What the world doesn't respect are Jews who are apologetic or Jews who cower. That the world pounces on, and that the world seizes on. But if a Jew stands proud for who he is and what he is, and is unapologetic for his beliefs, it's an incredible thing. The world ultimately, even if they don't like it, will come to respect it. So Rabbi Avo walks into the palace of the Caesar, and what happens? Even the non-Jewish maidens in the Caesar's palace are singing to him. Because ultimately, again, when the world sees a Jew who respects himself, the world comes to respect that over time as well. Incredible Gemara. Weiter. Arifas Egla B'Shlosha. So we'll say now we're going down the list of the Mishnah. So Egla Arufa. Remember again, Egla Arufa is you find the person murdered between two cities. So what's the halacha? So we measure the closest city to. We measure the closest city to the corpse. And what happens? The elders of that city come out, and there's the whole process where they go and they decapitate the calf. wash their hands over the decapitated calves. Let's go back to through it. The Gemara says as follows. So the Mishnah said that Egla Rufa is done with a basin of 3. So the Gemara says, so the pasuk says, now again, the way the pasuk frames it is, your elders and your judges will come out for the process. So zikinecha shnayim, so zikinecha is 2 judges, again plural, your judges, shoftecha shnayim, 2, vein beis in shakel, and you can't have an even numbered beis, and therefore what do you do? So see, you can't have an even number based in. Therefore, again, that'll give you 5, right? So zikinecha 2, shoftecha 2, that gives you 4. Add on an additional 1, that's 5 Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Shimon says, no, zikinecha shnayim. No, zikinecha is 2. Vein based in shakel. You can't have an even number based in. Mosif alein odechad harikan shlosha. You add on an additional 1, you have 3. So both say, machlokes Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon, Hi Shoftecha, my Avidle. What does Rabbi Yehuda do? What does Rabbi Shimon, do with Shoftecha? Right? Rabbi Yehuda used Shoftecha to teach another 2. What does Rabbi Shimon do with Shoftecha? So the Gemara says, Shoftecha teaches us, they will say, that you can't have any 2 judges, right? Or any judges, but rather, again, you need expert judges, i.e., from the Sanhedrin. From the Sanhedrin, Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda learns this out, ziknei zikeinecha. So Rabbi Yehuda learns this out, the pasuk just said ziknei, but instead it says zikeinecha, your elders. So your elders teaches us that, again, members of the Sanhedrin. Rabbi Shimon, imi ziknei, and Rabbi Shimon says, if you learn out from ziknei, hava mina ziknei ashok. I would have thought ziknei just means they have to be old. Maybe it's just 2 old guys in the marketplace. So therefore, again, kasav rachmana zikeinecha. I-V-E kasav zikinecha, and if what it just says zikinecha, hava amina sanhedrin ketana. I might have thought that even members of the small Sanhedrin, we'll say, what's the small Sanhedrin? 23-member court. 23-member court. So that would be enough. Therefore, kasav rachmana v'shovtecha, v'miyuchadim sheb'shovtecha. It has to be, again, expert judges, i.e. from the Sanhedrin. Okay, so the Gemara says as follows: Rabbi Yehuda. Now back to Rabbi Yehuda. Gamar ziknei, maybe samchu ziknei eides yedehem. So Rabbi Yehuda has a gzera shava. His gzera shava is from par he'elam davar min hatzibor, where again you have smicha over there, and it says ziknei over there. So a gzera shava from par he'elam tegla rufa. So the Gemara says ma'ala halami yuchadu shebeida. Just like by par he'elam you need Sanhedrin. Afkan yuchadin shebezekinecha. So to Rabbi Egla Rufi also needs Sanhedrin. The Gemara says, well, if that's the case, iyalif leilaf kula mehasam zekinecha v'shavtecha lamli. 1 second. If you have a gzera shava from par helam davar min hatzibor to Egla Rufa, then you don't need the whole drush of Egla Rufa at all. And just like par helam requires what? Sanhedrin. Members of the Sanhedrin, so just go ahead and learn that out over here and forget about any other drasha. To which the Gemara says, Ella vav v'shavtecha leminyana. Rather, you have to say that the vav of shavtecha comes to give you the number of people, or it comes to teach you the number for the beit. Rabbi Shimon vav lo darshan. Rabbi Shimon doesn't darshan the vav. Okay, so we'll say. So bottom line, just to keep clear what's happening over here. Rabbi Shimon, how large of a beit do you need for Egla Rufa? Rabbi Yehuda, you need 5. Rabbi Shimon, ultimately, again, you need 3. So elamei ata. So the Gemara says as follows. We'll say second to last line. Elamei ata v'yatzu shnayim. Umadadu shnayim. But 1 second, if you're darshaning plural words, then the yatzu is another 2. Madadu, they will measure as another 2. Rabbi Yehuda hare tisha. According to Rabbi Yehuda, that should give me a basin of 9, right? Because again, I got zikinecha, shovtecha, v'yatzu, madadu. 2 for each of those words, that's 8. Can't have an equal number basin, that's 9. Rabbi Shimon Shiva, according to Rabbi Shimon, that should give me a basin of 7. So Shimon says, no. Those words are needed for something different. This teaches me something different. V'yatzu, what does v'yatzu mean? Hein v'lo shluchan. So we'll say v'yatzu means it has to be the members of the Sanhedrin themselves who go out to the corpse, and they can't dispatch messengers. They can't dispatch messengers. We'll say it's a very profound idea. There are things in life that you could outsource and delegate, and there are things in life you have to do yourself. So Egla Rufa, the Gemara says, Torah tells us, members of the Sanhedrin, you have to do it yourself. Hein v'lo shluchan. Umma to do, they have to measure. What does this mean? Shafilu nimsa ba'alil, Amud Beis. Shafilu nimsa ba'alil li'ir, tzarech lasot b'medida. So this is very interesting, we'll say. What happens if you have the following situation? Halach l'may, so they find the corpse, right between 2 cities. Now, it's clear that the corpse is closer to city A than it is to city B. even if it is clear, just by mere ocular observation, that the corpse is closer to city A, the process of para aduma demands a process of measuring. You have to measure it. So again, the Yatsu teaches us that the members of the Sanhedrin themselves have to go. They cannot dispatch a messenger. And umadadu means they have to measure, even if it's clear just by ocular intake, that is closer to one city. They still have to engage in the process of measuring. Masnisin de lo kiyatano. So therefore again, we're still up for the fundamental machlokes Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda telling me, for Eglah Aruf, I need a beis din of 5. Rabbi Shimon, I need a beis din of 3. Some additional pieces of halacha. This beis din has to be comprised of members of the Sanhedrin. Right? Next, what else? The members of the Sanhedrin have to go out themselves, can't dispatch a messenger, and you have to measure even if it's abundantly clear that the corpse is closer to one city. Okay, so the Gemara says, Masisin dol kiyaitan. Both the second line from the top, 14b, Yudal Amadeis. So our Mishnah clearly does not reflect the view of the following Tana. The Sanyo, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, V'yatzu zikinecha v'shovtecha. The pasuk says, listen to this, it's Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, different drasha. Pasuk says, Eglah Rufa, your elders and your judges shall go out for the Eglah Rufa. Zikenecha, zu Sanhedrin. So elders, that means members of the Sanhedrin. Shoftecha, ze melech the Kohen Gadol. Wow. Shoftecha means who else goes out for Eglah Rufa? The king and the Kohen Gadol. So I'll say, this is incredible. Right? Can you imagine this? For this Eglah Rufa, right? You find this person, this Jew, this Yid, murdered in between two cities. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, who's going out for the process? The Sanhedrin, or these members of the Sanhedrin? The king and the Kohen Gadol. So the Gemara says, why does Shoftecha mean Melech and Kohen Gadol? Melech t'chsiv, Melech b'mishpat ya'amid ares. So you see over here that the Melech is associated with Mishpat. Kohen Gadol t'chsiv, ubas ala kohanim v'alavim ve'ala shofet. So I'll say, so bottom line, so interestingly enough, so Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov understands Zikinecha refers to Sanhedrin, Shoftecha refers to the king and the Kohen Gadol. Everybody has to come out for Eglah Rufa. So Rabbi says, Yibaylahu, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Bechad Polig or Betarta Polig. So it's very interesting. Now the Gemara asks, is Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov arguing only on one point or on 2 points? What does this mean? So the Gemara says, B'melech v'Kohen Gadol Polig aval b'Sanhedrin. Ikar Yehuda, Ikar Shimon. So we'll say, so now, when Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says that Zikinecha is the Sanhedrin and Shoftecha is the king and the Kohen Gadol, is he, when it comes to Sanhedrin, is he agreeing with one of the two opinions, either Rabbi Yehuda or Rabbi Shimon, that either it's 3 members or 5 members of the Sanhedrin, and so he's agreeing with one of them in that respect, and the point of contention is Melech and Kohen Gadol. That whereas Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon do not require the king and the Kohen Gadol, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov does. O Dilma, or the other pass, O Dilma, but Sanhedrin nami palik. The Amre Kula Sanhedrin ba'inan. Or maybe Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is arguing on the Sanhedrin point as well. And whereas Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon only require 3 or 5 members of the Sanhedrin, perhaps Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is going to require the entire Sanhedrin to come out to the Eglah Arufa. In which case, again, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is espousing a dramatically new position, which is that Eglah Arufa requires the entire Sanhedrin, the king, and the Kohen Gadol. So we're trying to define the parameters of the Mahol Yisroel ben Yaakov and Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yosef Tashma. All right, so let's analyze this. These are really just fascinating cases. Matzah na beis pagi. So we'll say, okay, a little bit, 30 seconds of background. Zakin Mamre. Zakin Mamre is a member of the Sanhedrin who refuses to yield to the majority and just espouses his own halachic rulings. And again, just refuses to back down even when he is outnumbered. The halach is that a Zakin Mamre is executed. So let's say, so now watch this. So matzah na beis pagi. So let's say again, they find the Zakin Mamre, they find this rebellious judge, and in a place, beis pagi, that's the name of a place. Rashi says over here, beis pagi, makom lifnim min chomas ha'ir, v'nido kisham l'chol dvarav. Beis pagi is actually in Yerushalayim. Well, it's within the walls of Yerushalayim, and therefore again, it's considered to be part of Yerushalayim. So let's say again, the Sanhedrin ran into or it sounds like the Zakin Mamre ran into the Sanhedrin and Beis Pagi. V'himra alehen, and this is where the showdown occurred. So the showdown between the Zakin Mamre and the rest of the members of the Sanhedrin occurred in Beis Pagi. So the Gemara says, Yachol tehei Hamra Asamra, you might have thought that his rebellion is then a okay, I was going to say like a proper rebellion, right? In other words, you might have thought that this would then warrant the death penalty. So the Gemara says, Malamed Shamakum Garim. So we'll say no. Therefore, what is the Gemara teaching us? In order for a Zakin Mamre to be put to death, the Sanhedrin has to be sitting in its place in the Lishkas Hagazis, in the chamber of hewn stone in the Beis Mikdash. Right? So therefore, again, if the Sanhedrin is outside of their place, and that's where the showdown with the Zakin Mamre occurs, Halocha L'maisa, the Zakin Mamre is not executed. So in other words, and again, we're going to do this so you have Zakin Mamre, but in order for Zakin Mamre to be executed, he has to rebel against the Sanhedrin, and the rebellion has to take place in the chamber of hewn stone, which is the sitting place of the Sanhedrin in the Beis HaMikdash compound. So the Gemara says, by the way, where would you ever run into the Sanhedrin, right, as a group outside of the Lishkas Hagazis? It was like a field trip, where are they going that you're running into them as a group outside of the chamber of hewn stone in the Beis HaMikdash? So the Gemara says, Dinafik Kama. So, and how many judges are you running into? And if you want to say it's part of them, some part of the group, then how can you declare a guy a Zakin Mamre if you're only running into part of the Sanhedrin? After all, maybe the other part of the Sanhedrin that stayed behind would agree with this singular sage, in which case he's not a Zakin Mamre. Elapshita denafik kulu. Rather, you must be talking about a case where the entire Sanhedrin was outside of the Lishkas Hagazis, outside the chamber of hewn stone. The Gemara says, whoa, lamai. So why is the Sanhedrin out of the chamber of hewn stone? And why are they together? If you want to say, I don't know, like I said, field trip, I don't know, want to get a shawarma, I don't know, what are they going out for? So the Gemara says, Mi matzu nafik, is that allowed? Are they allowed to exit as a group from the chamber of Bahaksiv? Sarecha aganasar al yachsar mazik. Suppose the Gemara quotes a beautiful pasuk from Shir Hashir, which literally translated, your navel, your stomach is like the half moon. The half moon is a reference to how the Sanhedrin would sit. They sat in a semicircle. But the idea, literally again, Sarech Hagan Asar, Al Yechsar Mazag. Do not let the dilution be lessened. So again, without delving into the entire drush over here, or the entire pasuk, the idea is the Sanhedrin is supposed to be stationary as a group. In other words, whenever they are together as a group, they're supposed to be together, ultimately again, in the Lishkas Hagazis. So why would they all be out together somewhere else? To which the Gemara says, Ella pshita ledvar mitzvah. Rather, the only reason why the Sanhedrin would be together as a group outside of the Beis HaMikdash compound must be because they're there for a mitzvah. What's the mitzvah? Hechi dami, lav l'medidas egla, Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, he damar kula Sanhedrin ba'inan. Rather, it must be that why would the whole Sanhedrin be out together as a group? It must be for egla rufa. The egla rufa. And whose opinion does this reflect? Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. And therefore, what do you see over here? Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov doesn't just disagree in that he requires the presence of the Kohen Gadol and the king, but he also disagrees with Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon in that what? In that he requires the presence of the entire Sanhedrin for the Egla Rufa process, and not just the group of 3 or 5. To which the Gemara says, lo, not necessarily. There's another reason. Kigon sheyatzu lohosef ala ir v'ala azaros. It could very well be there's another reason for this entire Sanhedrin to be relocated together outside of Lishkas Hagazis. Why? If they want to go ahead and add on either to the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash or to the territorial area of Yerushalayim. Kidisnan, as we learned, in Mosifin ala ir v'ala azaros ala bebeizin shel shivim ve'echad. Ultimately, again, you can't add on either to the area of Yerushalayim or ultimately, again, to the area of the Azara without the entire Beis Din, Sanhedrin of 71. So therefore, again, it doesn't necessarily, so we're just trying to figure out a case where the entire Sanhedrin would be outside of Lishkas Hagazis doing something else. So originally we thought, Egla Rufa, and it's a proof to Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. Maybe not. It could very well be that there's another reason that everyone agrees you need the entire Sanhedrin outside of Lishkas Hagazis, and that's when you want to add on to the borders of the Beis HaMikdash, the courtyards, or you want to add on to the area of the municipality of Yerushalayim, that requires the entire Sanhedrin. Obviously, we'll stop over for today. So just to point out, we're still in the midst of this machlokes. How many do you need for a Beis Din? How many do you need for a Beis Din of Egla Rufa? So again, we've got Rabbi Yehuda telling us 5, Rabbi Shimon telling us 3, Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, we're not sure. Does Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov fit into one of those two aforementioned opinions, or does Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov require the entire Sanhedrin? That's still unknown. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov also requires the king and the Kohen Gadol. Resolution, halacha l'maisa, and Miras Hashem some profound ideas as well. Miras Hashem tomorrow. Shkoyach.